Hello, my name is Veronica Vanda Rangel, and today I will be presenting child abuse. What is child abuse? Child abuse is the physical or psychological mistreatment of a child. The most common type of child abuse, according to the CDC, is physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. Physical abuse is when someone uses intentional physical force such as hitting, kicking, shaking, burning, or other force against a child. Emotional abuse is behavior that harms a child's self-worth or emotional well-being. Examples of emotional abuse are shaming and name-calling. Sexual abuse is when someone engages a child in sexual acts, such as rape. Neglect. It is when you fail to meet a child's basic needs like housing, food, clothing, education, and medical care. And this was mentioned in chapter 10 of our book. Consequences of child abuse. Child abuse can have many consequences when it is kept in silence. Children can suffer from immediate physical injuries. These types of injuries are bruises, broken bones, cuts, and psychological problems. The children can eventually be killed because of the physical abuse they are receiving. Abuse also induces stress, and this can disrupt early brain development in children. At times, extreme stress can take a toll on the nervous system and immune system. This leads to higher risk health problems as an adult. These types of problems are future violence victimization and perpetration, alcoholism, depression, sexually transmitted infection, delayed brain development, drug abuse, eating disorders, behavioral problems, obesity, and smoking. And in this picture, you can see the long-term effects of sexual abuse, which are the feeling of guilt and shame, feeling different or alone, sadness, confusion, anger, low self-esteem, dissociation, fear, hatred, depression, promiscuity, eating disorder, body image issues, anxieties, changes in lifestyle, turning to violence, substance abuse, self-injury, post-traumatic stress with disorder, which is known as PTSD, rape trauma syndrome, RTS. Child abuse can also lead to suicide. Consequences of child abuse continue. According to an analysis made by psychologists at the University of Manchester and the University of South Wales, have revealed that suicide attempts were 3 times more likely for people who experienced sexual abuse as a child, 2.5 times more likely for people who experienced physical abuse as a child, and 2.5 times more likely for people who experience emotional abuse or neglect as a child. Also, when you are suffering from depression because of child abuse, it leads to suicide. Suicide acts as an escape route from this abuse. Legal policies of child abuse. 40 countries prohibit corporal punishment of children in homes and school settings. Unfortunately, it is still allowed in the homes of the whole United States. Also, it is allowed in schools for 19 of the states. Most of the states have indicated that the physical punishment must be reasonable and not excessive. Adrian Peterson, an NFL player, was charged with reckless and negligent injury of his 4-year-old son after he struck him with a switch and left him with bruising and injuries in all of his body. You may think that the reasonable thing to do was for Peterson to spend time in jail. However, that was not the case. He only paid a fine, did probation and community service. This just proves how the legal policies in the United States are not as effective as they seem. In the first picture, we can see Adrian Peterson's son and his bruises and the mark that were caused because of Adrian Peterson. In the state of Texas, 3 children die from abuse or neglect on average every week. Child Protective Service, known as CPS, is responsible for the assessment, investigation, and intervention regarding cases of child abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. However, CPS is not as effective as it's supposed to be. In Texas, in the year 2017, there has been 24 cases that were ongoing with CPS. These child abuse cases all resulted in the death of them. Clearly, the system is broken and there should be something to fix this. In the second picture, we can see Gabriel Fernandez, and his case was very sad. Actually, 4 of his social workers were charged because they didn't do the right thing to prevent his death. And the last picture, we could see Sharon Matthews, and she was one of the 24 children in Texas that died while they were still in CPS investigation. In the United States, the average number of child abuse cases is approximately 2.9 million cases per year. Approximately 5 children die per day because of child abuse. The Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, known as CAPTA, was passed by the federal government in 1974, and it was amended in 2010. It is the largest body of legislation that regards child abuse. However, the states govern child abuse issues more. Child abuse education. It is important as educators to know the legal requirements we have to follow for child abuse. All of the states of the United States have a legal requirement for education and care providers to report any type of suspect of child abuse. Teachers have an important role in their classrooms to see any signs of child abuse. They can really change someone's life if they report things early. Teachers can also build student support for understanding and to report the abuse. They can also promote awareness and prevention for child abuse. This is why it is important to know the signs of child abuse. These are the signs of child abuse in the child. They show sudden changes in behavior or school performances, has not received help for physical or medical problems brought to the parent's attention, has learning problems or difficulties concentrating that cannot be attributed to specific physical or psychological causes, is always watchful as though preparing for something bad to happen, lacks adult supervision, is overly compliant, passive, or withdrawn, comes to school or other activities early, stays late, and does not want to go home, is reluctant to be around a particular person, discloses maltreatment, the signs in the parents. They deny the existence of or blame the child for the child problem in school or at home. They ask teachers or other caregivers to use harsh physical disciplines if the child misbehaves. They see the child as entirely bad, worthless, or burdensome. Demands a level of physical or academic performance the child cannot possibly achieve. Looks primarily to the child for care, attention, and satisfaction of emotional needs. Show little concern for the child. The signs of child abuse in both the parent and the child. They rarely touch or look at each other. They consider the relationship entirely negative. They state they do not like each other. And these signs of child abuse are from chapter 10 of our book. Child abuse in education. These are some of the books that teachers can use to promote and prevent child abuse. The first book is Your Body Belongs to You, and it is by Cornelia Speltman, and it is illustrated by Terry L. Wiedner. And this book basically emphasizes on how several body parts should not be touched, and they are called private parts, and people shouldn't touch you if you feel uncomfortable. A Terrible Things Happen, book by Margaret Holmes, and it's illustrated by Carrie Pilo. It shows something that shouldn't be kept a secret, and it's basically saying that teachers should tell their students what secrets are good and what secrets are bad. Do you have a secret? And it's the same, it's almost the same as the other book, and it's talking about the secrets being good or bad. And talking makes you feel better. So teachers can really help students by forcing them to talk and giving them advice. I Said No is a book by Kimberly King and Zach King, and it's illustrated by Sue Rama and Kimberly King. It's very informative about how some rights are bad and they could later convert to threat, can lead to horrible things like abuse. And then the last book I chose was A Child Called It, and it's by Dave Peltzler. And this actually talks about his story. He was actually abused as a child by his mother. He was even about to die because of the torturous games his mother would play with him. What's new? It's new on child abuse. With all the coronavirus pandemic going on in the world, the anxiety of children staying in a home with abusive parents is very high because of the shelter-at-home orders. Children cannot go to school physically in some states, and they cannot see their teachers and counselors. All of this can lead to child abuse cases going up and being unchecked. Imagine what a children is facing right now, knowing that their parents are abusive and their only escape route, which is school, is not available because of this pandemic. Teachers and counselors serve as lifeliness for vulnerable children. I like this picture specifically because it's informing us that the drops of child abuse cases have not been reported. Basically, the reports are going down. And it's the Children's Advocacy Center across Texas, basically because of the pandemic. Critical thinking question. How many states still allow for corporal punishment of children in school settings? 19 states still allow for this. What is the number of cases of child abuse per year in the whole United States? There is about 2.9 million cases per year in the United States. What is the name of the largest body of legislation that regards child abuse? The name of this body is actually an act, and it's called the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, also known as CAPTA. What are some of the signs of child abuse in children? Some of the signs are sudden change of behavior, overly compliant, passive, or withdrawn. What are some of the consequences of child abuse? Some of the consequences of child abuse are alcoholism, depression, delayed brain development, drug abuse, eating disorders, and obesity. Are child abuse cases dropping during the coronavirus pandemic? Not necessarily. They're not actually dropping. They are just going unchecked, so people don't know how many children are actually being abused right now. Later, I believe that when this pandemic is over, there's going to be more cases than ever since they're going unchecked. Did Adrian Peterson go to jail for the abuse he caused his son? No, he didn't. He only paid a fine probation, and community service, unfortunately. Why are teachers important to prevent abuse? They usually are the ones who report child abuse, and they serve as lifelines for vulnerable children. Citations, these are my citations, and that's a picture of Gabriel Fernandez. Thank you.